Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the Out of Spec podcast. How's it going? My name is Francie. Thank you for joining us today on another episode of the Out of Spec podcast. You know, I gotta love being in the South. My twang is coming out more and more. And additionally, I get to explore the Southeast region and the eastern coast of the United States, which I've been out west for the past 10 years, exploring all those beautiful states. Loved it, but I'm excited to be back down here with the humidity, the heat, more mosquitoes. Don't love that, but I do love traveling and seeing new places. And just yesterday, I attended the media day for the grand opening event of Kempower North America, their facility in North Carolina, specifically Durham, North Carolina. And I got to have a Q&A session with other members of the media, with the leadership team at Kem Power, as well as a full tour of the facility. So in this episode, I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro about the event, my takeaways from the Q&A, background of Kem Power in case you don't know it, why this is significant, as well as some summations and conclusions at the end of the Q&A session that I had specifically. The tour will probably be on the Out of Spec Reviews channel, but I'm sure I'll do a follow-up here on the podcast as well, because it was pretty interesting. So let's dive into the details. This episode is made possible by the support we get from Fort Collins Kia. If you are in the market for any electric Kia, not only do they never add market adjustments, they will deliver your car to you anywhere in the 48 contiguous states for out-of-spec viewers. More information in the link in the show notes.
We work hard to create quick and scalable EV charging solutions for everyone, everywhere. Our first factory opened in 2021. By 2027, Kempower will have delivered over 100,000 charging points around the world. We have opened new factories every year and will keep expanding to meet the growing demand of EV charging solutions. We always keep on improving our operations. We continuously create new ways of working and best practices to serve our clients better.
Welcome, everyone. We ask that you silence your cell phones and be prepared to be charged up as we take you on Kempower's journey to powering Planet Cool. We've invited you all here this afternoon to celebrate a significant milestone of the journey of Kempower as we embark on a new chapter of growth and innovation in EV charging. My name is Miracle Wilson. I'm the Communications Manager for North America, and we are thrilled to welcome every single member of the media here today for Kempower Hour. It's an exclusive behind-the-scenes look for you to learn about our innovative solutions and share them out with the world. You are our key to powering Planet Cool. We want to recognize some of our specific media partners who have traveled from all over the country to this location. Out of Spec Studios, Tesla Flex, A Girl's Guide to Cars, Turned Down for What podcast, Sustainable Truck and Van, Clean Technica, and Business NC. We'd also like to take a moment to recognize our distinguished audience of Kempowerians and our members of our executive leadership. Now, without further ado, it's my esteemed honor to introduce our CEO, Mr. Tomi Ristimäki. Thank you, Tomi.
Thanks, Miracle. And as we are not that big crowd, I don't want to make it too official. Let's go a little bit about what Kempower is all about. And basically, I would reserve more time for the questions. And that's what the exclusive hour actually means, that you can have open questions. We have people here to answer your questions and actually go things through. So maybe I'll take the remote as well. It's a bit easier. So powering Planet Cool, it's our mission that we are powering the electric traffic and looking at really, it's a wordplay, so cool and actually keeping things cool. And our vision is to create most preferred charging solutions, most wanted charging solutions for everyone and everywhere. And at the moment, we look at Kempower as a global company with more than 800 employees, with 40 nationalities working for us, 12 subsidiaries and 2 manufacturing locations, which would be my great honor tomorrow that we are opening the second, so considering Europe and US. And Europe, I'm making our home country, Finland. So basically, we look at the countries in there and the blue areas of the world, that's where our charging has been delivered and is operational, charging some kind of vehicle types. More exotic countries, if you look at South Africa, Chile, I would look at like Mongolia, that would be underground mining. So the road vehicles is not the only thing electrifying at the moment. And if we look at the distant places like Greenland, we are actually market leader in Greenland with 3 charging systems in the city of Nuuk. But it's also telling the story that the electrification movement is moving all around the world, different places. It's a little bit different phases when you look at where things are going, but it's basically a global movement when we are looking at actually saving the planet in a way. The traffic actually counts for 22% of the global emissions of CO2, and we are affecting that part quite heavy. And the electric evolution, when we look at also what we are here in the US, making that we would have as orange area in the map below as we have the map above. We want to make that more orange as well. That's the location of our chargers today. So last year we delivered 20,000 level 3 chargers, DC charging points globally. And when we look at 7.5 million charging sessions in a year and 196 gigawatt hours energy delivered. So the energy figure, somebody might think how many nuclear power stations we need actually to make that. But that amount of energy is away from CO2 generating fuel. So that's the impact we are making actually on the whole world. Looking at Kempower's year, last year, we are growing in the triple-digit growth, making about 300 million euros last year, and looking at quite profitable company. At the end of the year, ended up 700. Now we are more than 800. So we are also having a lot more nice colleagues in the company. And looking at, I don't know how many are here who are completely involved in what we do and what is actually how you charge electric vehicles. In US, you use terms with AC charging, you talk about level 2 charging, and in the DC charging, you talk about level 3 charging. And the one in the left-hand side is not actually a charger. That's a device that talks to the charger inside the vehicle. And when you look at the powers that you can actually charge a vehicle today, the size and the price of the vehicle limits the amount of how much you actually charge, because you have to fit the charger into the budget of the vehicle and also to the size of the vehicle. And when you want to make the charging a little bit higher power, you take the charger outside the vehicle, and then you have no limits than the surroundings basically in there. And this is actually the main market of Kempower. We have maybe less than 1% of our sales is on the left-hand side, and 99 point something is in the level 3. And also the symbols below have a lot of meaning, because you have only the personal cars on the left-hand side, but when you start looking at the bigger vehicles, that is all level 3, because the batteries get larger and the time is limited, and you work with commercial vehicles, and when you work with commercial vehicles, time is money, and there the times actually count a lot. There we are working from 50 kilowatts up, and today our biggest product is 1.2 megawatts, so 1,200 kilowatt, which is the new product released this year. And we also have a lot of effect on the times. I'm not going to stand in front of you. And basically, when you are talking about, you read from newspaper, it takes hours to charge a car. That's when we are talking about the left-hand side. But actually change that time to minutes. And it's the kilowatts and powers that equals actually the time as well. And when we look at where Kempower is different, we started from the beginning looking at the situation that there will not be a single vehicle and how much power you have actually for single vehicle. We look at let's say the problem with charging, the problem moving the vehicles, that there will be a lot of electric vehicles. And how would we create a system that actually supports that? How can we make fleets of vehicles move in the most efficient way? And that's where the satellite system came from. So we distribute the power for many vehicles. And it's the whole idea that we provide the vehicle exactly the power it needs. And then we can, or our customers can resell the energy to the other vehicles. So when the battery gets full, the power is moved immediately to the next one. That's what the satellite system is all about. And we thought about it, how to make the traffic actually work. That if you make 400 kilowatt charger for every vehicle, you will be, let's say, hoarding the grid connections of the world. We think it more in a way that you have a certain kind of a utility grid connection available, and how do you use that in the most efficient way, and how you serve as many cars as possible and other vehicle types. And it gives a lot of flexibility, and on the top, you can actually system that can fit into the normal parking lots and don't take too much space. And our customer segments, from the beginning, we actually started from the number 2, commercial vehicles. That was the biggest market in Europe. That meant public transportation, buses. That was our biggest market in 2020. And private cars today is the most significant because that's the sheer number of cars. But what we see that number 2 is coming back in a way that electric trucks is changing the market. The amount of buses doesn't justify that. In the North American continent, of course, the school buses is a significant segment. But in a way, when we look at back to the 2030, we see that the commercial vehicles will be the biggest level 3 charging market in the world. And as a future challenge of highway is very interesting. We don't see that yet. Maybe in harbor container handling vehicles, we see underground mining moving. But when we go to 2030 and forwards, we see a lot of the construction vehicles, maybe even agriculture going to electric. So there is the future markets in there as well. Today, what we see in certain parts of the market that the boats and ships are going to battery movement as well. And that's actually with this megawatt charging system, what we announced is also standard that the marine industry loves as well. And of course, the big thing in here is availability and reliability of the charging. We have been famous for that in the European market, and this is something that we really see one of our key selling points in the US market as well, that we are proud to say that our charging availability is over 99% there. This comes from the design of the unit. In our unit, even if something breaks, the other parts of the system are taking over. The complete, let's say, redundancy of the system is benefit, but it's also the design and how things were done. And we come from the Nordic countries, so the cold is also very familiar to us. And now we have been practicing in Australia and Saudi Arabia and hot countries as well, and that's going to the right direction as well. So that's definitely something that is in our core to actually work with the solution that keeps on running. And join the movement, and join the electric movement especially. Thank you from my side.
Okay, so like I said, I was over in Durham, North Carolina to attend the grand opening of Kempower's new manufacturing facility over there. It has the goal of course, enhancing EV infrastructure across the US and Canada, North America, building 300 jobs, creating 300 jobs, and manufacturing EV chargers to use in this market, as well as boosting the local economy. North Carolina is seeing a good bit of electric investment. VinFast even said that they were planning to have a production plant in the area. Last time I heard, it was a little bit delayed, but anyways, we're not talking about VinFast. And I bring them up because I have a VinFast VF8 as my company lease. Of course, that is a side note. I digress. This Kempower event. Kempower's has a big focus on sustainable energy practices as well, but also there is a ton of potential in the North American market. We've featured Kempower before on the Out of Spec podcast and other Out of Spec channels. They've even been a sponsor of Out of Spec before. Kyle has used their infrastructure over the pond, over in Europe. They're a Finnish company and has really enjoyed it. It's been a good experience, and they have a cool design, unique design, and they make good hardware. I mean, I haven't personally used it, but Kyle has endorsed it, and I know that y'all trust his opinion as I do. It's important to note the significance of why they're coming to North America. There's a lot more funding now here that probably sweetens the deal, as you'll hear the CEO, Tomi, say. And I got to speak with a couple of people on the leadership team or ask them and get answers from them. So CEO Tomi Ristimäki, as well as the Chief Operating Officer, Sana Otava, and Marcus Savanto, VP of Operations and Business Development in North America. I'm probably putting more of like a Spanish accent on that than the Finnish. Apologies. I'll get better at that. My Finn friends. But so this insightful Q&A session had other members of the media ask questions. So you're going to hear those as well as my own. And, some of the answers were a little bit vague, as they tend to be with this kind of thing, asking a company for all the details. They often can't share it all. The in-depth tour of the facility had maybe 6 or 7 stops along the way to see what they're building. They're building the power cabinets and the components of those, the power units as they call them, and then the dispensers, or the satellites as they call them, as well as the megawatt charger, which they're not manufacturing here yet until there's like requirements about that, because of course with the NEVI funding, Build America, Buy America, that is the whole goal here. So they are manufacturing in North America to take advantage of all these incentives. And then they also have this movable charger as well. So that tour, like I said, will be on the Out of Spec Reviews channel, and you'll go through it with me, walk through it with me, and speak with their team. One thing is that their team is very knowledgeable, very passionate. They seem to be happy. I mean, at the very least, those are things that I look for in a team that I hope will succeed, along with the leadership. And they're coming with a proven record. Sometimes we've seen comments on Kem Power episode where it's like, well, where are they? Yes, I did ask that. They are not in America as much as we want. They don't have as many live sites, but they're new here. They do have a significant presence outside of the North American market. So don't forget, proven business models can be proven outside of North America, and then we hopefully will see them proven here as well. So that's why we have a little bit of hope and faith that they will be successful, but we will have to see. So before we get into the Q&A session, I promise that's coming up soon. Here's a little bit of background on Kem Power and their North American plans. So we will see in the Q&A session that I did ask about sites in the US. Of course, there's just a few. There's one in Tennessee. Hopefully I'll come to see that soon. I also asked about partners. Can they speak to any partners at all, or any customers? No real scoop there yet. We did talk about the biggest challenges facing them right now. And it was stressed that the grid, specifically, not only where there's power, but the pace at which the North American utilities move is quite slow. And this has been a topic of conversation a lot. I can't remember the exact description that Tomi, the CEO, used to describe our utilities here, but it's different than other markets. And I typically call it traditional. It seems like they've been moving along with what works, and now the world is changing very quickly. There's a lot that utilities can make money from and take advantage of, but they're going to have to really change the way that they do things from top to bottom. And I know that I live in a city where the utilities is sometimes the butt of a joke, because it's not always up to date with things that have advanced far quicker than the utilities segment of the world. So it's a bit unfortunate. We will have to see how that happens. And we've talked about who else needs to be at the table to decide what role utilities plays, how these timelines can be shorter, what the regulation should be, what the policy should be. There's a lot of folks with different perspectives now that need to be a part of the conversation to make sure that we have the solutions for this kind of infrastructure, and just a grid that will have more and more pressure on it, because it can happen, but how are we going to make it happen? Okay, so that's one of the challenges. You'll hear it in the Q&A session. But Kempower's moving. Let's hope they get the ball rolling fast. They were founded in Finland. Like I said, it's known for their DC fast charging solutions designed for electric vehicles, fleets, and off-highway machinery, mining machinery, heavy-duty machinery. This is a huge room for electric potential that's already realized, and then also impact as well. There's a lot of emissions that come from the medium and heavy-duty transportation sectors that the passenger vehicles, of course, those are affected by it too, but huge impacts to be made in that space as well. So they're busy there too. It's not just about us folks charging our passenger vehicles along the way. Their product line includes the Kempower S Series, T Series, C Series, and like I said, they cater to a variety of needs. They have a presence in over 30 countries. They are expanding their reach, of course, in North America, And that is an emphasis on local manufacturing as well and tailoring solutions for the US and the Canadian market. Of course, NEVI standards is important to be compatible and reliable for the EV infrastructure that is happening here and take advantage of that funding, or let customers be able to take advantage of that funding as well. And you'll hear that noted that was a huge catalyst for why they're coming into North America. This funding, Tomi even said, like, usually they look for 10% of EV adoption in a country that they expand into, and we're at around 7%. But because of this kind of incentive that we're seeing, state, local, federal level, it was enough to convince them to hurry up and come on in. They do have an ambitious goal of being one of the top 5 DC charging companies by 2030. So hopefully their strategy works. Let's now dive into the Q&A session with Kempower's leadership and other members of the media, where they discussed these aspects in more detail. And I'll follow up at the end with my thoughts and questions for y'all.
The question is about this plant, because I'm not from the US. So can you tell us why have you decided to be here, to build here the first plant in the US? And is it up and running? We know it will be inaugurated tomorrow, but it's already active. So is there already a production here?
Yeah, I think the factory is operational. We made the first deliveries in December last year. And actually that was to Canada, but there's been deliveries to US now as well. But it is the idea of this plant that all the products actually for the North American market will be manufactured here. We started with certain products range that fit actually to the NEVI compliance regulation, so the funded project. If you look at the longer story that why we are in the US and why we are producing here, I think the US was self-evident that eventually we will do that. Original plan was 2 years later, and the NEVI funding actually pushed it forward, that we see that the government subsidies for charging actually qualify. Normally I look at the market that the new electric vehicle amount should be more than 10% to make market interesting. But actually in here, the government funding is chasing the game a bit. That the goal is to actually build the charging network that people are not afraid to buy battery electric vehicles. And that's actually sizable fund that we saw that we would be missing it completely if we would not be here, because it has to buy American regulation that a certain amount of the content must be made in US. And then if we look at why we are exactly here, then we actually look at many states. We look at the legislation, we look at basically ESG values of the states and educational systems, and especially the education of this area. If you look at let's say research triangle is very strong, and then the big part of our operation is the supply chain. And our sustainability strategies also have the supply chain near our factory, and then the suitability of the North Carolinian and the DS states supply chain of making parts for us is very good. And when we look at, let's say, education brings the future workforce, so I think this is quite favorable place to be. Not to mention the shortest possible time difference to Finland. So that was East Coast was just based on practical reasons. Yeah.
Francie's got one.
Yes. Hi, I'm Francie. I'm out of Spec. We've covered Kem Power a lot, and some of our team has been lucky enough to use Kem Power chargers overseas, but not here. So a lot of the time when we cover it, people, our audience who are so invested in EV charging are wondering, when are we going to see these in North America and where? So can you give me some insight on kind of your timeline there for live sites, as well as any significant partnerships that you are able to speak about in North America?
I think there's a lot of customers we cannot mention yet, but I think I would let Markus comment on where you could find them today. And
Please.
Thank you. Today you can find them mostly, let's say, near Minnesota, Michigan area. Closest to us actually is Tennessee. So we have one car dealership that has made this kind of site that is publicly open, and they are coming step by step. And let's say that hopefully by fall there will be announcements of larger sites in East Coast mainly at the moment. But we are constantly building those, and they start to pop up everywhere for the public charging. But of course we can have more of those as well.
Certainly.
Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to know exactly where and when.
Didn't you see the map?
Yes.
There was some orange stuff in there. Some of them could be actually for trucks and close sites.
Of course.
But,
Yeah, and
maybe
just-
they will charge your car if you go and ask nicely.
Hopefully. I mean, I am in Tennessee a lot of the time, so I don't know about a dealership, but which city?
I can let you know that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And kind of as a follow-up to kind of the partnership idea and these sites is we're seeing different models being applied. Some are by grocery stores, some are now along highways at Pilot Flying J stations. Do you have a specific approach for the amenities that you're going to include at your sites, or the specific kind of site design? Is it all across the board?
I think it's up to our customers who are actually, because we are the manufacturer of equipment, and we do have some recommendations, and some are following those, some are not. It's really up to the customers. But if I look at our European markets, I think we have basically both. We are quite strong at the retail sites. Today, I don't know if you know the company Sainsbury's in United Kingdom, but
Yes.
we are building a charging network, for example, directly with Sainsbury's. And it is then the roadside is more if you look at the fuel retailers or CPOs, but it's a combination, and it tells you about the flexibility of the system as well. It's quite ideal, and especially if you look at the retail locations, that its size is limited, and these thin satellites actually fit to that area pretty well.
I'll ask one more follow-up and then I'll pass it on. Sorry, y'all. That makes me curious. How are people reaching out, are organizations in North America reaching out to Kempower specifically to seek strategic advice? We've had a lot of trouble with EV charging here, and y'all paint a pretty good example of what it could be like. Can you speak to any of that?
I think it's been quite interesting how many famous companies know us already. That was really also when we were in the ACT in Las Vegas and discussions. Of course, that's a fleet show, but there was also people who handled the public charging visiting, and it was interesting to see that how aware could be. Some of the thanks goes to Out of Spec as well about spreading the message, but it is something that I think there is interesting place. You might find our chargers quite soon.
Okay, I'll hand this off. Who would like it? Anyone else?
So you were mentioning United States and the incentives and the possibility to have support from the institution. Are you worried about what can happen in the near future with the next elections? Because we know anything can happen, and even the political view can be different in the future. So I made the same question to other people here in the US, and they told me, okay, now that we have a clear road ahead of us, and there is no risk of coming back. What's your opinion about the incentives and governmental support?
I think the incentives, if you look at the NEVI funding, that's today, it's in the law, so that's probably pretty hard to change, even whoever would be the president. That's for clear. I'm not speculating too much on the politics, but I think it's a little bit different situation than in the past, when the EV industry is actually creating jobs, and actually the funds are also based on this Buy American. So it's a little bit different situation than some years ago when it was just exported goods, and now it's actually bringing industry in. So I would think that any government would actually care about the jobs and creating the industry. So from that point of view, elections are elections, and what happens after that nobody knows. So but I would point out that actually this created jobs and created industry is actually quite strong argument on here.
You have the same opinion about Europe, so European elections are next week, so It's very hot.
Yeah, the European
topic in Europe.
Parliament, I don't know how many things they actually affect, because then you have independent countries in there, but it's there is some certain moments when you have the economical situation that things are moving from the environmental thinking, people want to save money. The thing that we don't have time to waste, and many people see that as well, but it's short-term savings are creating, of course, some problems in funding sides. But I don't believe actually in the subsidy markets anyway. So they are a good push for the beginning before the real market starts.
Chris from Turn Down for What podcast. I'm equal parts fascinated by what you do as a business as I am the manufacturing process of it. And I'd love to hear two things: the differences that you had to make to your equipment going from Europe to America and meeting the NEVI requirements. Was there a lot that had to change there? Was it subtle? Did anything have to be re-engineered? And then secondly, setting up manufacturing in Europe compared to setting up manufacturing in the US. A big part of what we're trying to be better at is keeping jobs and growing jobs in America. So I love that you've brought it here. And I'm really curious how you find the differences. What's easier in Europe? What's easier in America? What's different when you're setting up manufacturing? If we go look at your manufacturing process here, and then we go look at it in Europe, is it fundamentally the same? You just picked it up and popped it down? Or are there real fundamental differences that have to happen here that you either don't deal with in one or the other? I know it's a lot of questions, sorry, I can repeat any of it if...
Yeah, and then you are sitting actually behind a person who would answer that best. So maybe, no, in front of you. It's Sanna, if you introduce yourself and you're probably the best person to answer.
Yeah, hey, I'm Sanna Odala, COO of the company. So actually, it's exactly the same. So we have that kind of operation model that what we did in Europe, we copy-paste here. So that's the model how we are scaling enough fast. So if you visit the factories in Europe, in Finland, Lahti, it's quite similar than you will see here.
Is this equipment the same as the equipment?
Yeah, the portfolio is the same. So our operation model is so that we are scaling so that we are able to produce the same products here in the US and in Europe.
Because the voltages are different, you know, coming here with the equipment, did you have to adjust that? Again, with the NEVI specific stuff, how much did you have to adjust the equipment
to make it NEVI compliant that you didn't have to do in Europe?
Not actually.
Okay.
Yeah, the same product. Of course, those market certification, but we have those valid in Finland as well. So the same product, because we designed the product so that it fits here as well.
No problem with the different voltages?
No.
No, I think we specified the 480 volts from the beginning, that it's okay for the product, and then you have some third-party components which you then choose a UL approved model for the US, like the switches and RCDs and some simple, and of course the charging standards. CCS1 is top of CCS2, and now the NACS on top. So in Europe it's CCS2 and disappearing CHAdeMO, what we have in there. So it's charging standard, and then that coming with the charging cables being different, but in general that's exactly like that. But something what I'd like to point out is it's not only creating let's say jobs at Kempower, because we rely heavily on our supply chain, which is always close to the main factory. So it's creating also jobs to the suppliers working in the area.
Hi, Jennifer Sinsaba. I work for Clean Technica. I have another question that's specific to challenges in the United States. There are a lot of places where there's just not much electricity available. We have some rural highways, rural towns that we're going to have to get EV charging at, and there's just not any big wires running out there. How flexible is the Kem Power architecture to maybe utilize battery storage and other technologies to make up for the lack of electrical access in those areas?
Yes, we actually operate we haven't had a single delivery in the North America yet, but we do cooperate with battery suppliers in the European market and having sites together with batteries. And let's see how that is. In certain areas, it's easier to upgrade the grid a bit than come with the batteries to every site. But I think it's getting more common to have actually battery supported charging solutions. But yes, we are doing that in Europe today, and let's see how it goes. That because of course it gets the price of the charging system higher, so it's about the investment cost. But rural areas, long distances, and not having the grid is forcing people to use actually some other kind of solution. And having a windmill and solar power there is making it a little bit undependable. So energy storage is our key actually in wide scale adoption, especially when we go to really high power charging solutions for trucks, long haul trucks, for example.
Hi, Francie, back again. That was a great question about the battery energy storage solutions and systems, and it does make me think a little bit about, FreeWire, that business model, not doing great, but the amount of energy that you need on a site, especially when you're talking about charging heavy duty, it seems like that would be very expensive and a lot of infrastructure on the site itself. Can you maybe just address that? And then side question is, how are you working to bring down those upfront costs, or what are you taking advantage of so that you can scale quicker?
It's making it clever. Actually, if we look at the normal personal car charging, our dynamic solution is actually a good fit when the grid is limited, because you can use the limited grid in the most efficient way. So in that way, if you look at like a standard style of chargers where you have to have equal grid connection to every power, so the dynamic system itself is already partly answering that. And it's a good question then, because I think that when you look at investment in the whole world, the grids need to get stronger because the use of electrical energy is getting higher. And we're looking at the renewable power sources, which is also needing more grid improvements for solar power, wind power. So I think going forward, we do need the grid investments everywhere. And in many places, they make a study that the core grid is actually quite okay. It's the local grids which are limited. So if we want to use electrical energy, of course, we need to look at the whole system. But in a short distance, the batteries could provide some help in there. But I believe in the long run that we need to invest in the grid as well.
Would you say that that's the biggest challenge facing you scaling right now, is the grid, or are there other challenges, especially compared to the markets that you already have?
I think in the current market, yes. And it's not the main grid, it's the local grid. And I think it's more the speed of the utilities who have, let's say, had a quiet life for the last 100 years and now suddenly they are getting requests that 10 companies want to have megawatt connection to the grid in the same week. So this is of course some adjustment on the local grid owners on how they move. And I think it was also the delivery time was transformers to make the connections today, but that's getting better. Now it's in some countries about bureaucracy, some countries it's just the slowness and not getting used to that. But it is, I think it's a time for the utility companies also learn how to grow with the market, because that's an extra business for them, but they are not used to this kind of a movement. So I think it will come because it's investment that will bring money to those companies.
Mm-hmm.
Can I compliment a bit?
Of course, Marcus.
I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself. I'm Marcus Suvanto, responsible for operations and business development here in Kem Power Inc. But concerning this grid connection, like here you can see our modular product. So in practice, if you don't have a strong grid connection yet, you can start with one power module only. And then when you get the grid connection later, you can add these modules. So that's also like future-proof model, that you can start with the power you have at the moment and then increase when the grid connection gets better. So you don't have to wait until you get all that grid connection and starting with that. Same goes with the satellites. You can add more of those later, up to 8 satellites to the same.
And it's actually what's been happening in Europe as well, when you have countries where you don't have that many electric vehicles yet. It's not only the grid connection, they don't see the business yet. They install, let's say, less power yet, and then you can add the power cassettes later on to actually then make the investment when the actual EV flows are there, to have that you don't immediately invest the megawatt. You can start with 100 kilowatt, 150 kilowatt, and then just easily build it up from there.
Definitely seems like it's in your interest for utilities to modernize a little bit, or perhaps the conversations should include more people at the table. That's what I've heard, that kind of language used around it, to make sure that we're all adapting as quickly as we need. And Marcus, you were just over by the charger, and I was hoping that you could, either of y'all, anyone, speak to how your design really helps or promotes reliability, so that someone in the field can come and quickly service it, from the connectors to the cables to the modules. Because yes, of course, more charges in the ground is great, but if they're not working, then it doesn't really matter.
I think it's the redundant design that if one module breaks, the others keep going, and then everything is modular in a way that the changing time when you get to the site is about 15 minutes. So it is about designing things that, because I can guarantee that everything breaks eventually. So it's a matter of time. Is it 10 years or is it 2 years? But it's basically something that you design also to service quite smooth, that you get things going on. And it's critical sites. Well, I had a example of public transportation in Europe. They have something that the whole city traffic stops if the charging stops. So there are things that you need to be fast in doing those repairs and maintenance, and remote services, remote operations, remote monitoring is a key also in our software solutions. So combination of things.
Definitely. So you can do the diagnostics on your side so that your customers can not have a broken charger on their site. Can you speak about that a little bit more, and that service, that relationship to the customer? How do you make sure?
A lot of our maintenance things and setting up and even commissioning is done in remote. Some coincidence, we were born in the COVID time when you couldn't visit the sites as well, so the remote services actually got better during those times as well. It is a key thing that you can do a lot of remote things, diagnosis, updating software, fixing things, and actually knowing when you go into the site what you need to do beforehand speeds up things. So definitely. And our goal is actually to have a service network with service partners throughout the continent to have a proper let's say response if something happens. But like saying that there is kind of this inbuilt redundancy, which means that the rest of the things keep going even one thing would trip for some reason.
Thank you.
Talking about markets and applications, what are your expectations on electric trucks, electric buses, so public transport, and also van fleets in the future, so from now on to 2030?
From our own aspect, like I mentioned, we see actually the commercial vehicles becoming the biggest level 3 charging market. Not because of the amount of vehicles, it's because the powers get up. The systems are, let's say, more extensive in that market. And the biggest thing, of course, there is the truck and the logistics, because I think the bus market alone is too small in the amount of vehicles in there. But because the powers will be higher, the value of the DC charging market in the commercial vehicles will be also quite more significant than the personal car industry.
And what about van fleets?
Van fleets are somewhere in the middle when you look at that. Always dropping, you sometimes calculate part of that commercial, part of that personal cars, but when you talk about professional operations, that's a little bit different thing. And when you look at professional operations, that's a big market is private charging and not the public charging. So the majority of commercial vehicles will be charged at the locations of logistic companies and the service providers. and they want to enjoy the cheapest possible energy. And if you have to pay somebody for electricity, that's not a good theme when your biggest cost is energy. So there will be a lot of in that market this kind of private, like the logistics centers, and when you're unloading, loading, you will have it using that time for charging, and then the kind of the on the route charging will be more that on based on the demand. And for example, megawatt charging solution that we introduced now in ACT. This is for example, to answer the question that you have a long haul, there is a certain amount of time you are allowed to drive, and then you have to take a break. And that's why you have megawatt, because during that break you should get the battery full, that the logistic doesn't use any extra time. That's the dream and that's the goal, but of course that doesn't happen immediately, but that's where this megawatt charging and things are coming from, that the truck drivers could use their legal break that they have to do anyway for charging and not to delay any operations.
And megawatt charging can be also the ultimate solution for coaches, for having more electric coaches on the street.
Yeah, coaches because they are intercity travel between the cities. That's pretty similar to truck. If you look at the bus, that's in inner city. School bus is short distance, but the long haul and actually this coach market are pretty similar.
And when do you expect megawatt charging can become really widespread?
Then let's make a call to truck manufacturers. We are ready, so it is something that it's being standardized now, and you have more vehicles coming to the market with megawatt charging standard, but you don't have almost any. You have some, let's say, prototype and test fleets available, but that's a new thing. It's the same as personal cars will have the NACS now, that the MCS will be coming to the trucks.
Okay, so that wraps up the Q&A session with Kem Power's leadership at their new facility, their expansion into North America, and the questions that we had. After this, I took a tour around the facility, and then I had to skedaddle. I wish I could have waited longer and even attended the next day event, but I had to get on my way. Busy gal over here. But it was great to see the inner workings of this facility, like I said, and really speak to the team. It was reassuring how knowledgeable that everyone was. Excuse me, I'm tripping over my words a little bit today. So the key points from this event to me include the potential impact of local manufacturing on EV infrastructure development and these companies with a strong standing in other countries coming into the US and Canadian market and hopefully being able to make a splash. Tired of headlines about EV charging reliability. Let's just get it to work. Come on, y'all. The challenge of grid connection, or rather the pace at which utilities moves. That'll be interesting. Would love to hear your thoughts on that. The significance of course, NEVI compliance and standards and the introduction of the J3400 standard. And then Kem Power's broader goal of becoming a major global player. How are they going to do it? They seem to be pretty confident, as they should be, if you're going to undertake something like this. So as they continue to grow in America, you'll see on the tour that will go on the Out of Spec Reviews channel, they have space. There's negative space in this facility to grow. And they have kind of all the steps in the manufacturing process in this facility, whereas they have whole buildings dedicated to each step in other countries where they are manufacturing. So maybe it'll grow to that. We'll see how quickly they scale, and we'll be sure to keep you up to date. Personally, I really enjoyed the chance to speak one-on-one with the leadership team. The tour was great, and the team really seems to be psyched about all of this. And of course, it's a big step for the company. And I do love exact answers with a ton of details, but oftentimes from leadership, they can only tell you information that they can tell you. But I do think that they were forthright in a lot of ways, but I'd love to know what you would have wanted to know. I was inspired by some of the questions that y'all have left on previous interviews or episodes with Kem Power to make sure that I was addressing what our audience is curious about as well as myself. So before we end, I'd like to hear from you. What do you think about local manufacturing? North Carolina, are you in the area? Is this significant to you? What about Kem Power? I know we mostly have a United States, Canadian, North American market, but we do have folks across the globe listening in. So that's also really cool. And people have commented before that Kem Power is, a strong contender in their country. They enjoy using them and they're used to this kind of hardware. So also chime in, let us know what your experience is with Kem Power, because it's essentially the same stuff, just made over here. As you also heard COO speak to that there's not really a difference between the manufacturing there and here. And then also, what features are you excited about when it comes to Kempower? Is it their design? You can learn more about that on the tour. Is it their approach? What did you think about how they answered the questions, everything like that in the presentation from the CEO? Would love to hear it. Please go ahead, have discussions in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in. I definitely found this interesting and was really glad to be invited to attend this event. Thank you for tuning in and plugging in on another episode of the Out of Spec podcast. Really appreciate it. Can't wait to hear your thoughts. Drive safe, stay charged. Have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.